Once the site was selected, it had to be prepared. 13 acres of limestone bedrock had to be accurately leveled. We are told it was done like this. Today we use power tools, but this is what Egyptian workers would have had. The point I want to make here is that the base was precision engineered. It had to be for the structure to come together. The top is 48 stories up. For it to be flat, the tiers and the base had to be flat. The arrows point to the lines which demarcate the tiers. At the same time that was going on, the base was oriented to true north very accurately. The blueprints called for a descending passage that would go underneath the pyramid. We see that angling down. The entrance to it would be built later since it was outside. The passage was small and cramped. We see flat walls, flat ceiling, and a narrow straight tunnel. You entered from above, and we'll see that the person walking through it is quite cramped. Why? Why build this narrow tunnel that a person can't really get into, only to find a jumble of rocks at the end? Curious. Not only why, but how? Could these tools do the job? It's never been explained how workers could wield stones in a 4x4 space without lighting. The ascending passage branches off from the descent, leading to the king and queen's chambers. The queen's chamber is below the king's chamber. Notice how smooth the walls are and how well squared everything is. Also, the opening to the shaft there. This is a cutaway diagram. Now back through the passage to the grand gallery. The gallery is narrow and has a high corbelled arch ceiling that soars overhead. There are some large, heavy blocks used in this construction. The animation shows the complexity of building this structure, but one component of the pyramid. A small passage at the end of the gallery leads into the king's chamber. This is where we get to crunch time. While most of the pyramid was built with locally available limestone, the king's chamber was built of rose granite from the Aswan Dam, which is 500 miles away. The blocks here weigh from 30 to 70 tons instead of 2.5 tons. Yet they are so well fit together they're nearly seamless. This feat has not been satisfactorily explained by historians. The shafts lead out of the king and queen's chamber. Considerable engineering and design knowledge went into them. They had to be accounted for in many courses of masonry. The robot probe produced a surprising result. Shafts were built with component units that look like this. It's obvious to see the sophistication involved. The Great Pyramid did have a casing. It was made out of Tura limestone instead of the local yellow limestone. The Tura limestone had to be quarried on the other side of the Nile and brought over. The blocks we're looking at weighed about 16 tons. They were beveled to a 51-degree angle and fit very accurately together. Khafre's pyramid has some on the top. We can still see the precise edge work of the construction. Every cut, every placement had to be precise and accurate. There are examples of casing stones on the other pyramids on Giza as well. But the best example of this component is at Abu Sir.
These are the casing stones to the bent pyramid, and you can see if you go right up to it that it's just really flat, the bottom of it. it's pretty cool to be able to kind of see them and have this view with the casing stones. You don't get that at the we're at the corner of the bent pyramid here, and it goes up like so. Now, just for interest, putting the camera sort of down to the level of the casing stones and getting an idea for how flat this thing really is when you look up it.
Many people are shocked to learn that the pyramid actually has 8 sides. This was only noticed during World War II when an airplane flew over the pyramid. The architectural design and engineering challenges added were formidable. The 8 sides raise the bar much higher. The phenomena is pronounced on the equinoxes.
Photograph of the pyramid, taken one night during the equinox 4, is invisible to the naked eye. You don't have to be at the pyramids at equinox to verify this. Here, the Great Pyramid, its shape, its dimensions, and its exact location are modeled by a modern computer program. It confirms Henri Pochon's finding. Maybe it was built like this in order to signal the equinox. It's an amazing achievement, considering the primitive tools the ancient Egyptians had to build with.
In this wrap-up section of the video, I'd like to break down this whole concept of precision engineering and why you won't hear historians or archaeologists talking about it much. And also why you won't hear them talking about specific tests that were done to try to prove their theories correct, like the raising the obelisk and the Japanese trying to build a micro-scale Great Pyramid. Those things happen. In fact, here is that micro-scale pyramid that turned out to be a fiasco and a mess. It happened back in the late 70s when Nissan funded a Japanese team that wanted to prove they could build a pyramid. The Egyptian Antiquities approved their application and also consulted with them, telling the team exactly what primitive tools and methods were used by the ancient Egyptians. Well, here are examples of those tools, and they are primitive. This was an international media event, and I was well aware of it. But it has been buried. Why? When they tried to quarry stone like this, they failed. They had to call in men jackhammers to do the job. When they tried transporting the stones across the desert sands like this, they also failed. In fact, they failed at every step, and what you see had to be brought there by helicopter. In spite of that, the pyramid was out of alignment and askew. An embarrassment, it was torn down. Historians don't want any flies in the ointment that they've been selling for several generations now. The mantra is primitive tools and methods, which implies that the structure is primitive. Any evidence that suggests otherwise is ignored then. The Japanese learned to achieve this, every tier had to be leveled. The Japanese were not the only ones to be humbled by the ancient artifacts we find in Egypt. It came with the raising the obelisk. That was a Nova Special. They also tried to duplicate every step of the process but couldn't. They could not quarry the obelisk, they could not transport it. It was bought by truck. Worse, it was only 35 tons when the heaviest Egyptian obelisks are 350 tons. Archaeologists always go for the easiest ones. Quarry, lift, and transport a 70-ton block of rose granite from Aswan, and you prove your case. Use the methods you claim were used and demonstrate their effectiveness. On the heaviest challenge, not the lightest. This is one of the few things in history that can be duplicated scientifically. Next month even. The public wants to know the truth.